The rules for the debate will be as follows. Candidates will be given 5 minutes to introduce themselves. They will be given 3 minutes after each question to answer. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to offer a rebuttal if they see fit. In response, a 1-minute follow-up will be allowed.
And now at this moment, we would like to invite the two candidates up onto the stage. So please put your hands together for Deryl McCarty and Damon Townsend. Thank you. We'd like to begin by offering you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves for about 5 minutes while you're running for auditor and what you plan to do in office.
Deryl McCarty, 30 years Air Force, and then for 20 years after retirement, did computer business on South Hill, and then I did a lot of things like Planning Commission, and then Redistricting Commission twice, Transportation Commission, and the Land Use Advisory Commission that's local up on the hill, South Hill. I have been 3 times chairman of the Republican Party, and I know this is a nonpartisan race. The office is nonpartisan. The person is not. And therefore, what that all adds up to is because I have also been deputy auditor, I see all of the sections of the auditor's office. It is elections, but it's also reporting your property changes. It's also licensing FIDO and drivers, the car licenses and passports. And the bottom line here is, because of that, we have to see where the connections are. Because it's not just our election system and the data that goes with it that's potentially compromised. It's also your property records. It's also the licenses. Because all of them mesh together and they all end up buried in the ground somewhere in a cloud. Clouds are up, well, you get the point. And it turns out to be, some of it's gone, some of it's compromised. In fact, some of you probably got one of those nice letters from the Department of Licensing that says, oops, your license data has compromised. Look on your license. It's got your signature. If they can capture that signature or their own, they can change it in somebody's data somewhere else, which is voter data, which is licensing data, which is passport data. It's all. So what's the bottom line here? Is professionalism in the office, all 3 sections. Get more and more people involved in learning about the cybersecurity and learning how to identify it and go from there. Every day I can say I trust this election. The next nanosecond, however, I don't know. So, in addition to that is the leadership part. Leadership is what you take to Olympia, hear and listen to people, take to Olympia and say, do we want to continue all mail-in, or do we want to do something different? Do we want to stand out at the high school gym and freeze? Well, actually, people do. They want to do that, but we have to take that to Olympia because the first responsibility is the law. We execute the law, and then we change the law if that's what needs to be. So, that's where I see the auditor's office going. Execute the law, protect the data and the vote, and then go down there and say, what else can we do? And let the counties run the elections just like the law says it's supposed to. Counties run elections.
Well, hi, my name is Damon Townsend. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to the Young Republicans for hosting this awesome event. It's so nice to get out and have a candidate forum and a debate. This is my first one I've done on this campaign trail, so I might be a little green, but I've done this kind of speaking before, so forgive me if I flub. Give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been nearly a lifelong Pierce County resident my entire life. I was born right in Good Sam Hospital here in Puyallup. We moved to Parkland when I was a young kid. Then we moved out to Roy because my dad didn't want to pay for the sewers. So I lived out in Roy. We then later moved to Eatonville, where I met my lovely wife right here. We lived in Eatonville for quite a while until I actually moved over to the Gig Harbor area. So I've lived in just about every corner of this county. I know that it's a giant county. I know that our county is bigger than the state of Rhode Island and has more residents. And I know that we run elections here in this county. I used to be your election supervisor for 5 years, from 2014 to 2019. I conducted presidential elections, I conducted local elections, I worked on buying our county a new tabulation system. When I first started there, we had a tabulation system that was installed when I was in high school in 1992. And it was still in use when I was working there in 2014. It was still in use when we had the presidential election in 2016. And that old system was so cranky and so prone to issues that we used to have to remake ballots. Any of you have been, I know some of you have been election observers. If you remember in the past, we used to have hordes of people that would sit there with the ballots that came in from the folks, and we'd have to take those ballots and then duplicate them onto another ballot in teams of 2 and then audited by teams of 2. To put this in perspective, in 2016, we potentially were supposed to reduplicate 98,000 ballots. Okay, that was nearly a third of all the ballots that we received in that election. We did manage to winnow that down to only 58,000 ballots that we had to duplicate. And I knew that that wasn't going to keep going in the future. So we instituted an RFP. We got a new tabulation system. We brought in every tabulation vendor that was out there, and I bought a system called Clear Ballot, which was awesome. I got a video about that system on my webpage if you want to see it. And then I knew I wanted to run for this office. I knew that this was something I wanted to do, so 2 years ago I left the office to work as an independent elections consultant. I went and worked for some of the election vendors as a subject matter expert, and then I also worked as acting elections manager for both Cowlitz County and Clallam County when their elections managers had abrupt medical issues and had to leave. So I conducted the 2020 presidential primary up in Port Angeles, and I did the 2020 presidential election down in Kelso for those people. Also, just something to point out, a third of the counties now use the Clear Ballot system as well, and I helped develop all those procedures for that system, and the counties came to me as an elections expert on how to do that. And we actually had a tied PCO race down in Cowlitz County that we needed to do a recount. And we wanted to save the county money. We wanted to save the candidates time. This was in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So under the state law, there's an alternate method for a recount. And we brought both the candidates in. We put up monitors so they could stay away, social distance, and have the glass between them. And we presented every ballot that was in their race. And we handed them tally sheets. They hand counted their recount. And it came out still tied. So they flipped a coin and somebody won. But I've got a lot of experience in elections. I love this county. I know what I'm doing. I'm about experience, and I've been reaching out to everybody. I have in the past been a member of both major political parties. I was a PCO for the Democrats before, and I was a delegate for the Republican Party to the state convention in 2012. So also, when you work in the elections office, you have to sign an oath that you're not going to donate more than $200 to any political campaign, and so I dropped my party membership at that time. I'm running for auditor. In 2007, we have a charter county in this county. The people of the county decided they wanted the auditor to be a nonpartisan position, and it's been that way for a while. So I'm running this to try to reach out to both sides. One thing I like to say, I don't want the referees to be wearing the jerseys of one team or the other, and it's important that both sides understand that the elections are done professionally, correctly, and accurately, transparently, and accessible. We still do have places you can come in and vote in person. A lot of people don't know that, but we have a vote center that's opened every election at the Pierce County Election Center. We opened 6 in the presidential election of 2016. Only 3,000 people came to those centers. So in order to be a good steward of the people's money, we started closing those down because people weren't utilizing them. But under state law, every county has to open up a vote center where you can still come in person. We will issue you a ballot, and you can drop it at a drop box that's inside the election center, and you can sign it right there so that you can feel a little bit more secure about that. That's me. I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll move on.
Mr. Townsend, you are the one candidate on stage who has not been endorsed by the Pierce County GOP. Your detractors have accused you of being a rhino given how outspoken you have been on your confidence in the 2020 election and your admitted history as a Democrat PCO. How would you respond to voters who are concerned you are not conservative and would not prioritize election integrity?
Like I mentioned before, I did reach out to both parties, both major parties, for endorsements. I was told by the Republicans that if I'm not a party member, I won't receive an endorsement. I'm fine with that. I still reached out. I know that you can often make the best converts with skeptics. And so that's why I'm here. I'm here to tell you about my experience. I'm here to tell you that I'm the best candidate for the position, and I know what I'm doing. I know that in Washington State, we have a very secure, very robust, and very well put together election system. Is it perfect? No. Nothing made by man is perfect. So is it good? Yeah, because I worked on it. I did it. I've had candidates come in before. We had a very close Lakewood Water District race that was super tight. We had a recount for that race. We had very skeptical candidates who came in. I, as the election supervisor, walked them through the process, showed them what we did, showed them how we do it, and the candidate's wife, who was one of the largest skeptics, became one of our biggest promoters for the elections office to let them know that we were professional there. I know other people here have come and seen our recounts. I know that some of you have come as observers as well. And we have good elections here. And I can answer more specific questions about that later. When it comes to being a rhino, like I said, I'm not a member of the Republican Party, so I can't be a rhino. I'm running as a nonpartisan position. Were I to run for a partisan position, I would have to choose a party, and then we'll see where that is.
You're going to accuse me of being a rhino.
I have more of a general question for both of you guys. So my question is, if you are elected, how would the Auditor's Treasurer Office operate differently than it does now?
I had ranked choice voting at the time. The county voters, in their infinite wisdom, said, kiss off after that a little fiasco. But the point was, going out and just talking about how the systems work is exactly the political message we send. You need to trust the system. It's not our job in the auditor's office to tell you who to vote for. That's your job. Our job is to have a way to report that, what your choices are. And he's right. The most difficult, probably the most difficult jobs in our governmental system are those jobs that are out there that are the sewer commission. We actually have Okanagan has a cemetery commission. Don't ask what the requirements are for that job. Just on this side of the grass, I think, is the only requirement. But the point is, these are tough, but we have to record what you want or not want. He mentioned the 16, 17-year-old votes. If you look at the auditor's pamphlet, which outlines and lists all the processes and procedures, look at it very closely, because it says you can register to vote at 17 if you will be 18 on voter day, except you can vote in the primary. Voting in a primary is adult business, not children's business. Sorry, that's just the way I think. So this is one of those things where we need to clean it up so that if you are, in fact, 18 on November 2nd, come on in the office, we'll register your vote, and we'll send you back to that little machine back in the corner, and you can vote. But not a day before. And so that's the political message. This is American business, but it's all across the board. It is not just the election system. It's all of our systems we have to guard and protect because they all talk to each other.
The auditor's office has influence over the legislature in terms of advising on matters that are relevant to the office of the auditor. As auditor, what, if anything, do you have in mind for proposing to the legislature?
So yeah, the auditor's office, it's a little bit of a misstatement. They don't have a huge amount of influence over the legislature, but they definitely we work as hard as we can with especially our local Pierce County legislative group and then other counties as well. We have an auditors association where the auditors get together and they review legislation and they try to see, okay, how is this going to impact us? Is this something that we can implement? Is this something that's going to really hurt the office? And then we go and testify for that. And then we also do propose some legislations. One of the bills that I proposed, and it got a hearing and it passed the committee and it died on the floor, was I hate waste, okay? I just hate waste. It's just something I hate. Under state law, it says that we have to mail out a ballot envelope, and a secrecy envelope, okay? Now, at some of these election conferences I've been at, I saw a wonderful envelope that's from the Utah, it wasn't Utah County this time, I can't remember the county name, but they had an envelope. And what it was is the flap that you closed your envelope had your declaration on the inside of it, like we used to. You remember we used to have a secrecy flap on our envelope and you used to rip that off? Well, logistically, that was so painful for the staff to do. It slowed down. It took forever to rip those flaps off, and then it was just another wasted piece of paper. But in Utah, they were smart. What they did was when you rip that flap off, now you have the voter's signature, the voter's declaration on a piece of paper that's archivable. Okay, so we have to archive all those envelopes. Well, if I can archive a lot of pieces of paper, that's a heck of a lot more boxes. Less boxes I have to archive than all the envelopes. In addition to that, by ripping the private information and the signature off, what does the other envelope become? It now becomes a secrecy envelope. So, because you no longer have the voter's information on it. So that eliminates the need for a secrecy envelope. So I built a little presentation, I took it down to the legislature, I presented in front of the committee, the Tribal Affairs and Local Government Committee. It's a strange committee. We like testifying before two different things that you don't think are related. And then Senator Hasagawa was asleep in the middle of my presentation, and then after I left, he had actually woke up and wanted me to come back in and explain it again. So it was a good bill, and it passed their committee, but of course it's not sexy enough for the pass in the big legislature. They got bigger fish to fry, but I'll push that bill again. The other thing I'm going to push is, like I mentioned, going to the DMVs and educating the folks who are registering voters. I want that to be a requirement. I think that it would be awesome if in state law that it was required annually that the auditor's office hold a voter registration training for every DMV office, or Department of Licensing office, I'm sorry, I'm mixing them up, in their county. That way, the people who are at the clerks, they're renewing your license, don't just have a piece of paper stuck behind them that has the voter oath. Okay, they actually go, do you want to register to vote? This is a serious thing, and when it's done, you're going to be registered to vote. We're going to change your address based on this. We're going to update your signature based on this. Spend a little time when you sign that little pad. This is not Costco. You can't just do a squiggle. That same signature on that pad is what we're going to use to check your ballot. Anybody ever got a challenge ballot? It's because those are 90 DPI squiggles that suck. I would like to have those DPI, those signature gathering tablets at the DMVs upgraded to get us some better signature images as well. Those are some small things that I really would like to do, and there's some other big ones too, but I want to focus in on, I had a good boss once who said, pick your battles. Find the ones that are small enough to win and big enough to matter. And those kind of ones like that, we might be able to get passed in the legislature. You can't shoot for the moon until you first build the rockets.
Very similar in our approach here. But the point is, the legislature exists. Our power over this legislature is not much, but we can talk. And we can talk bringing with them the power of a county, which is the voters. How you vote this November is going to make it easier for me to go to Olympia and say, this is what we would like. And what would I argue? The first thing I would argue probably is, and because of the way I grew up, I understand why some people, mostly women, in a phone book, remember the phone book thing? Yeah. A phone book would change their name from, I'm making this up now, Abigail B. Smith, and they would just say AB. because it was safer. Because no one could figure out if that was a male or female. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of people on earth who sign their name A.B. Smith. We need to make sure, go back and make sure that how you sign your ballot is Abigail B. Smith. Because, and we have this, we have a compact, by the way, between 3 states, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, where we share ballot data at the end of an election, and it says, A.B. Smith voted 3 times. And A.B. Smith, with that specific birthday, voted 3 times in 3 states. Okay, so they break it down, and I remember in '09 when we were there, we had something like 12 of them in our county, and there was something like 900 all between the states. We had 12 of them in our county. You do the investigations. Believe it or not, in all but one case, all of those people were different. Same birthday, same name, different person. But we have to chase it down. So we did find one, Gig Harbor no less, who voted twice. And it was a naturalized citizen, and she said she got a ballot, and where she came from, when the government sent something, you had to do it. So she voted once in Gig Harbor and once in Idaho or wherever, grandkids or whatever the reason. No, we didn't prosecute her because most of us understand this, but it's still there. You can't, you have to go down, you have to ask the signatures to change, and we have to make sure that we can ask the question, are you a U.S. citizen? Right now, you cannot ask that question. You can just assume it by saying, you know, you've got to be a U.S. citizen to sign this, right? And it doesn't happen. We've got to be able to ask the question and show me.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit on that, because one of the things that Deryl did mention that is something that we are seeing is the signature is not necessarily the best way to identify someone. But I don't support trying to have somebody sign their name. Your signature is your unique mark. It's your chop. It's you. It's like you have naturalized citizens who speak English as a second language. They're completely legal to vote. And so many times we would have to challenge their ballots because they would try to sign their name in English. And I would tell them, that's your unique mark. My lovely wife here, she signs her name with these bubbles and circles, and you can't, but you know it's her because you can see it. So I would tell those folks, you don't have to sign your name like that. You sign it as you do. That's your name. That's your unique mark. And we also would get letters from younger people who they're not learning cursive anymore. They're not learning how to sign. It's just what's happening. It is what it is. And so they sent a letter and say, well, we'd rather have a PIN number. We'd rather have a code. We'd rather have, there's different methods available to try to look at that we can do to identify folks. And we need to look into those and support those. And what Deryl mentioned also about the matching, that's a system called ERIC. It's a wonderful system. It's been expanded now to, I think, 35 states, where after the election, we pool all that data and they send that information back to each Secretary of State's office and they disseminate it down to the counties. We in 2016 had, I think it was 7 potentials, and one of them was the most unique one I've ever seen. It was a father-son, junior-senior that had the same date of birth, and then on the senior's original voter application, when somebody had hand-keyed from those old voter registration forms, they hand-key those, of course they fat-fingered it and they inverted the numbers. Well, he was born in 48 and his son was born in 84, and so it looked like they were the same person, but we dug down and it wasn't. But we did find some folks. They were mostly college kids. There was 2 students at UPS who voted both at UPS and at their homes. Those were forwarded to the prosecutors. They sent them a really scary letter. They were unregistered, voter registration was canceled, and that was taken care of. And there's been some other cases statewide, but that system needs to be expanded to all states in the union so that we can really make sure that people are not voting in multiple states, because it is a state thing.
The auditor's office is one that is intended to be nonpartisan. How would you balance your partisan goals with carrying out the nonpartisan image and tasks of the office?
One who claims to be partisan. Actually, we do it all the time. 30 years in the military, did I have a partisan view? Yeah, I did. Did you act that way? No, you don't. You know the differences, and you execute them that way. First come is the law. Whatever it says to do, you do it to the very best of your ability. Doesn't matter what you believe, but if the law says ballots are now purple with gold dots all over them, first of all, I'll vote for that because I'm a Husky. But if that's what we'll do, that's what we do. But then you do the leadership part, which is take it down to Olympia or to Congress and say, this is what we need it to do. Now, Congress, states, according to our Constitution, do elections, period. That's what it says. But the Supreme Court has helped us by saying, and there are some fences around that, and we have amendments to the Constitution that says, no poll taxes, that kind of thing. But we will continue to first do the law, and then the leadership down in Olympia, regardless of what my personal predilections are, because there's really not much there. For example, if somebody said, if one of your questions, and maybe it is one here, but what do I think about abortion? It doesn't matter in the auditor's office. What do I think about any part of this? It doesn't matter in the auditor's office. What matters in the auditor's office is fair, open, secure elections. That's what matters. And records that are safe, and Fido's license that is you pay for on time.
Everyone has deeply held beliefs deep in their heart. That's between them and whatever else you want to believe in. If you believe in a higher power, you believe in yourself, whatever. You're going to have those thoughts. They're going to guide what you do. Okay? They're going to guide your professionalism. They're going to guide what you do in your life. Okay? I can tell you, I used to be partisan. Like I said, I've been on both sides of the party. Not necessarily because I was partisan, but more because I just wanted to see how it worked. I wanted to go through the process of both parties. I wanted to see what happened when you registered as a member of a certain party. What happened when you went through the nomination process for the different candidates. What was it like to be in the environment where everybody's waving signs and they're all happy and they're all caught up in the fervor of it. It's fun. It's interesting. But then I started working in elections. And when I started working in elections, you realize, well, gosh, I just want to get this election certified so I can go home and see my kids, right? You want to make sure that it's right. You want to make sure you're doing everything right. But I swear, like there's days, like even on election night, okay, it's done. I didn't even look at who won, if it was my person or the next one. My wife ran for Parks Commissioner. I looked, of course I looked to see how she was doing, but but it was like the last thing on my mind. I more wanted to make sure I got home so I could make dinner and not pass out. Is all the boat tabs are due on the same day. It's a zoo. That's ridiculous. It sure would be nice if they'd spread that out, because that's a bad experience for the customers, and it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. Nobody likes to stand in a line to buy a tab that they got to stick on their boat so they can go fishing or skiing. They just want to go have some fun. So I left that at the door. Of course I have my deep-seated beliefs. Any of my friends and family who know me well know what I believe and what I think, because I don't keep that opinions to myself. But I'm not going to do that when I'm the auditor. I'm not going to do that when I'm here. What I'm here to do is let you know that I am a competent elections administrator. I've got an accounting degree. I know how to account for things. I know how to make sure that our records are accurate. I know how to make sure that they're audited. And I also have the support of the staff there. The staff there knows me. We work together. When I was the elections supervisor, the recording and licensing manager, we work together and try to spitball ideas. How something we do in elections can you do in licensing that can help you? What do you do in licensing that can help us serve the customers better? Those are the kind of things that I want to do. And it's not partisan.
The auditor's office has the ability to discreetly raise government revenue through raising of value-added taxes and other fees. Would either of you be willing to propose new VATs, value-added taxes, raise them, or increase fees generally to raise government revenue for popular programs?
Actually, one of the things I want to do is ask the question about everything we do and how much it costs. Yes, the auditor's offices raise money. Recording and licensing, for example, millions and millions of dollars a year. It's also rip-offable, as we discovered with, do you remember Troy Kelly? The state auditor, who was, he took some of the recording fees and sent them off to the Cayman Islands and then charged the customer again for those recording fees. He was also a state legislator, but it was uncool. But the bottom line is there is a lot of money raised. Okay, let's go back to square one. And when you enter office, you ask questions, why? Why does a dog license cost X? Why does an exotic dancer license cost a lot of money? Why do we even have that? Why do I have to have a license as a wig maker? Well, they say it's medical. The problem was they forgot to tell you who the consumer is of this wig. Only the dead. Why are we doing this? I understand learning how to use and make wigs with real hair and to look at somebody's picture and say this is what their hair looked like when they were 25, and I'm going to match that on a cancer non-survivor. I understand all that. But that's not a business of the auditor, is it? It's probably the business of the undertaker. Every one of these things, you just have to ask the question why. Some of them are good reasons for doing some things. You still have to ask the question why. Then the second question is the law. The law in Washington has been for a number of years that if you have a license or a fee, it must relate, the amount of money must relate to the cost of doing the recording and the licensing. Well, with electrons, it really is pretty cheap. So why do we need to do, in licensing especially, all those licenses, and why do they have to be so expensive? So that's the kinds of things you have to do. You start off the question with why, and then go from there.
Well, Daryl's right. The auditor's office collects a lot of money, but they don't often get to pick what they collect. The legislature, again, in their infinite wisdom, passes down fees. When you transfer the title of your house, tacked onto that is a ton of fees for recording documents. It all goes into different funds that are budgeted for different pet projects that are passed by legislation. And what the auditor's office role is to try to make that less painful when you come to have to pay that. Why did this go up by $25? Well, here is what happened. The legislature passed a new law. They wanted to do this. They wanted to collect this for this funds. I'm sorry, don't kill the messenger, but that's what we got to do. We got to try to provide a nice landing page for those people who come in. Animal control under the auditor's office. Thankfully, it's under the sheriff's office no more. That was a huge budgetary drain because you would wind up bringing in these animals and it would cost almost as much of our budget as elections to take care of some of these animals. And it was crazy. You would go to a house with, I would have meetings with the animal control officer. He would go somewhere on the Key Peninsula and find 300 gerbils in somebody's house in cages. Exotic snakes. Just how do you handle an exotic snake? You know how much it costs? There was 25 pigs that somebody had, and we had to send them. They were the kind of pigs that you eat. They weren't the pet potbelly pigs, and we had to send them to the veterinary's office. It cost the county something like $185,000 to make the pigs healthy so that when we could auction them for slaughter. Okay, that's ridiculous. But that's what you do. That's what those fees go to for licensing of your animals. Now, one thing that we are moving to in this economy now is we're moving to a gig-based economy where there's a lot of folks who don't work for a traditional employer anymore. They do stuff on their own. They're an Uber driver, a Lyft driver. For a while, I was making some money on the side using a system called TaskRabbit, because I always loved building models, and TaskRabbit is from IKEA. You go to people's houses and put their furniture together. It may be goofy, but I like to do it. And I got paid $45 an hour to go do it. So it was kind of fun. So I drove to some people's houses and I put their goofy Swedish spelled furniture together. And it was fun because I like doing that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? When that's the person shows up at your door, do you know if they're legit? That's what licensing's for. Licensing's for, you can go to a database, you can go to a system, you can look and see, is the person coming to my house a legit person? Do they have a license? Is it somebody who is gone through, my wife and I, we have a small CPR and first aid training business, and we are with the chamber, we are licensed, and we make sure that we are on every list so people know that we're for real.
Departments or agencies such as the police, fire department, homeless aid, etc., that come in mind as due for a performance audit? And is that something that the auditor's office does?
As somebody who has an accounting degree who's never accounted for money, I've only accounted for ballots. Just as important, because you played the lotto before. You know that somebody from Ernst & Young goes and measures every lotto ball to make sure they're all the same, to make sure that they all weigh the same, because there is compliance audits, and that's in my heart and soul. The county does have compliance and performance audits, but they're under the executive branch, okay? So the executive does that. The auditor is an independent elected entity that's not, it's in the executive branch, but it's not under the executive, okay? So you have the prosecuting attorney who's in executive office, the auditor, the assessor treasurer, and the actual executive. I have always been a supporter of moving performance audits into the auditor's office. It should have oversight. When the executive's office shouldn't be doing performance audits on the roads department, because they answer to them. Okay, so I am a supporter of moving performance audits. That would require a county ordinance or possibly a charter amendment. I'm not sure which, but I actually am a big fan of that. I would like an expansion of the auditor's office to include some performance auditors, because I want to make sure that we're spending your money right, that we're not wasting it and we're doing what we're supposed to do. So you got monetary audits and you got compliance audits.
Normal audit that he grew up learning and living with, which is a financial audit. Can you account for everything that came in and everything that went out? And in government, you also have to have, it came in, it went out, and did it go out in accordance with what the governing authority, let's say is the county council in our case, for example, or a school board. If they said you can spend this much money and you spent this much money plus $1, we got a problem. But a performance audit is something slightly different. And we all have to, there's two questions in an audit. Did you do it right? And are you doing the right thing? That requires somebody other than, and probably at a fairly high level. But it doesn't bother me that in the case of this county at any rate, the original performance audit ordinances passed by the county council were a separate organization that worked both for the not the auditor, for the exec and for the county council together. And it was an interesting group of things. But they asked both questions, and as a matter of fact, we in the auditor's office got one of those performance audits. And it was, A, are you doing the right thing? And are you doing the right thing right? Now, do we need to keep doing that? We should do that always. Doesn't matter who does it. And the state's already got tons of our money in the auditor's office to do just what we have suggested they do, which is come and look at us, make sure we're spending the money right, and spending the money for the right reason.
Well, I'm going to talk about 2020 in the light of something that happened here in Washington State in 2004. Does anybody remember that election? There you go. Okay. So I was not in elections at the time. I was climbing telephone poles and installing data circuits to businesses. So I was not in elections at that time, but I was a spectator like most of you were. And we saw that election, and it was very suspicious. Now, I'm not going to get into the details. I'm not going to say what was right or wrong, but what happened out of that was people realized that we needed to revamp the system. We needed to correct this. We can't have this kind of discrepancies again. I know that in Pierce County, they used to just all the ballots that came in, they shoved them through the tabulator, they saw the number at the end. If 5 or 6 of them didn't get counted, they didn't know. That's why recounts caused such a strange thing. So part of the fallout of 2004 was that we implemented statewide requirements that counties process their ballots in special ways, that they batch them into small groups so that you can find discrepancies much more quickly. How do we make sure that we're doing this right? Because we had our big scary moment in 2004, and we realized that we needed to address that and become more professional and make sure that it was done more correctly. And they came to us to see it. And when all my friends would ask me, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I said, look, we are ready for this. We were set up for the pandemic before it happened. We already had the system in place that could accommodate it. But in Pennsylvania, they didn't. In New York, they didn't. In other states, they didn't. They just had to willy-nilly make up stuff on the fly. And like I mentioned before, they don't hold elections for a year, once every quarter on a regular basis. So not only were they dusting off their old manuals, but they were also trying to put new rules in place and do them on the fly. And I can't tell you with confidence what happened over there. Okay? I'm not going to, but I can tell you what happened here. We had it before, and we took care of it, and we'll keep making it better, because again, anything made by humans is never going to be perfect, but we all learn from our mistakes, and we can all readdress them and evaluate afterwards and make things better each time.
At this time, we will be moving into our closing statements. Both candidates will be given 4 minutes max to speak, and just to reiterate to the voters in this room what the message of your campaigns is, and to highlight the differences between you and the other candidates in this race.
Okay, well, I want to thank you first. Again, I thanked you when I came. I'm going to thank you as I leave. I really appreciate having an opportunity to speak with you all. This has been a great night. This has been really a lot of fun for me. This is my first campaign. I've never campaigned before. I've always just been involved on the sidelines. This is something new to me. It's something exciting. It's really weird. I keep telling my friends, this is the longest job interview I've ever had. Okay, it's crazy. It's like, and my interview panel, where usually it's 2 or 3 people, maybe a set of 7. No, it's over 500,000 registered voters in our county. When I left, we just busted 500,000. I think we're almost to 600,000 registered voters in the county now. And it's people are moving here. They want to move here. All my neighbors are from here, and I've been here. I know this county. I know that there's a difference between east side of Tacoma and Roy and Eatonville and DuPont and Greenwater and the Key Peninsula, okay? I know everything about this county. Our last couple auditors have all come from the city of Tacoma. It would be nice to have somebody who's been around the rest of the county. I'm that guy. It's nice to have somebody who has done this job before. I've not been the auditor before, but by golly, I've been the elections supervisor. I've been the elections manager for interim in some other counties. The Secretary of State called me and asked me to come work for her for 3 months to train the counties on our new voter registration system that we've implemented out there. So I'm an acknowledged expert. People know that I know what I'm doing. I'm not here just kind of making up fluff. I've done this stuff before. I'll do it again. I know my county. I save money. Julie Anderson, every time I saved money, she'd spend it on something else. But now, if I'm the auditor, when I save money, I'm going to save that money. Because I think that we can bring some of the stuff. I have the experience. Everybody at the elections office always joke, oh, here's Damon. When I was at the phone company, we used to do stuff this way. Well, I brought that private sector experience into the auditor's office, and then I implemented it. I brought people together, I updated procedures, I modernized stuff. When I started there, we used to have ballot accountability based on these multiple triplicate carbon copy forms that cost us uber amounts of money and were so hard to reconcile. I digitized that, made it easier so that we can pull that stuff up quicker. That's the kind of stuff that I've done before, I'll do again, and I love this county. I really love this county. I know almost every corner of it. I really appreciate everybody here. We have this big, diverse county with all sorts of people. We're one of the purple counties in the state. We're one of the ones that doesn't always go one way or the other, which is why we need to have an auditor who's, like I said, on Super Bowl Sunday, not wearing the jersey of one of the teams. We all remember when we played the Steelers, it looked like that the referees were not wearing, they were wearing the Steelers uniforms. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to make sure that when we have a winner and we have a loser, they can shake hands and agree that it was done correctly. And I also want to make sure that the people of the county who come to do any other services that the office provides, like the licensing, recording, and the pet service, that they come into a comfortable workplace, or a comfortable place where they can do business. You don't want to have the thing where you just pull a number, stand in a line. They've actually implemented a really nice appointment system there. I don't know if any of you utilize that services, but that's actually really nice. You can get an appointment ahead of time. So if you are going to jet off for lunch and get your tabs renewed, you can do that. I'm glad they did that. I like to expand things like that. And I just wanted to say one last time, thank you.
We lived here, other than the 30 years in the military, and by the way, I was 18 years as a military brat. That they were Washingtonians, but we lived overseas in all kinds of places. But this is my county. This is where we live, where we have our kids here. And as a matter of fact, I was elected a PCO in 1978 here it was in Parkland. So at any rate, the kinds of things that I bring to the table is lots of years of leadership, of different places, different times, and then applying it with some thought to making sure, A, we're doing the job right, and B, ask the question, why, so that we know we're doing the right job. That's the bottom line. And I got told by the union steward in the auditor's office when we first came in. And by the way, the first person who was not a Tacoma person who was the auditor is that lady over there. She's from Bonnie Lake area, so Lake Tab, so. At any rate, we're from all over. There's only about somewhere between a quarter and a third of this county is in Tacoma. The rest of it is not Tacoma. And we're bringing to the table issues that you provide leadership for, that not necessarily are they auditor type issues. What are the biggest issues in the not Tacoma area? Transportation sucks. That's what you hear all the time. And whether it's in Tacoma or elsewhere, crime is too much. Period. So, you do the things in the auditor's office that stop some of that. How? Protect the data you have, because it was that data in the Employment Security Department that let us lose almost $1 billion. But that's okay, they sent her to Washington, D.C. to do the same thing. So, don't ask me. But, like Damon, I want to thank you very much for all showing up.